The number one answer is the more specific and inflexible the client is about the creative direction, the worse that content will perform. So
So, what if you could spark real change with just one campaign and the right digital strategy? Welcome back to Creating Powerful Impact. I'm your host, Shay Wheat, and today we are diving into how you can build real world influence and drive social good. Joining me today is Ryan Davis, COO of People First, a digital strategist helping mission driven organizations create measurable, lasting impact. Welcome to Creating Powerful Impact, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
I'm excited, and I honestly I want to just dive right in because you've been leading digital campaigns for years, and I'm curious to know what's the biggest shift that you've seen in how businesses and organizations can create authentic connections online.
Well, the biggest shift has been, over the last few years into this era of the creator economy. So for the longest time, brands were the main voices of brands. They were centralized, whether or not they were across different channels or whatever, but the messaging was centralized, the look and the feel. And now we've entered this new decentralized era of communications where it's not just top down, but you need to be having conversations with your audiences and bottom up, middle down, middle up, and working with all different types of creators to be decentralizing your messages. Why is that? I think it's a combination of two things. Like, there is the reality that social media itself is decentralizing. So, it's not enough just to have an Instagram or a YouTube these days. Depending on who your audience is, there are a lot of platforms that they could be on. But also, people they don't trust government and organizations and brands in ways that they used to. And if you look at things like the Edelman Trust Barometer, you see over the last couple of decades just a decline in trust between people and these organizations.
Yeah. So, what would you say is like one of the biggest misconceptions leaders have about growing their brand online?
I think that sometimes people really focus on growing their brand and they don't focus enough on sort of telling their personal story sort of into the brand, right?
Yeah.
And so what we've seen now is like CEOs have to be like the chief influencer officer. They need to be out there talking to the audience, to the public, talking about the mission of the organization in all different ways, in accessible ways. That would have been kind of strange even 15 years ago, but now I think is just sort of commonplace. And we're also in an era where people feel more comfortable building products and ideas in public. So like you're actually kind of co-creating along with your audience in a way. So there's so much more buy-in to the product or the idea, because folks are contributing throughout. So I think this is a big shift.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I'd never thought of it as the CEO needs to be the chief influence officer, but that's so incredibly true nowadays. And if you're a CEO going, okay, I know I have to be on YouTube, I have to be on Instagram, I have to be in LinkedIn, I have to be in all of these places all at once. Oh my God, that just seems so incredibly overwhelming. I started the business because I wanted to help people do what I do.
Right.
What is it that you see is a way to kind of help shift that mindset for those types of CEOs that maybe are a little more used to being behind the scenes and not that influence officer?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'm like an old millennial, so I'm super comfortable with the internet, but I'm slightly too old to have been sort of the digital native generation where I was kind of always creating kind of content. So, you know, we sort of sat around as an organization and said, okay, if we're going to be producing marketing collateral like white papers and blog posts and podcast, for each and every one of those pieces now we need to have a video, because we don't have a video of somebody talking, of somebody explaining it, the person who wrote it or the person interviewed or whatever. it just falls flat because that's people are looking for sort of that into the content. And so we produce a lot of like really kind of like thoughtful materials and best practices, and they're kind of dense, right? And you see how many clicks those get. But if you have, if we have one of our like digital organizers sort of talking through that piece on green screen, all of a sudden that's getting seen by like so many more people. So I think what I would suggest to CEOs who are not super comfortable with it is to kind of like lean into some of your younger staffers to sort of help you do that, and kind of figure out then who are the characters going to be in the company that are going to be the social characters.
Oh, that's a good way. So it doesn't have to be the CEO as much, but just the characters of the company.
Yeah, using the word character here sort of narratively, right?
Yeah.
But there's going to be somebody who's going to speak to business. That could be the CEO, that could be the COO, it could be, like Adam, who runs Instagram. He is just on Instagram and threads all day long, right? He's talking all day long, he's recording videos, he's really in it. Whereas like other CEOs are sort of, step back or maybe have a different person who's kind of taking that role. So yeah, I don't think it has to necessarily be the CEO, but there needs to be a person who has that business authority that can speak as like, an executive of the company.
But I think that also supports the scalability of it, would you say? Because then it's not exactly totally reliant on the CEO. And should they
Yeah.
want to grow their company to the point of exit, it's not just them.
Totally. No, I think it's great to show all the faces, and especially in this look in an age of like inauthenticity, in this coming age of AI, where we're going to be overwhelmed with AI slop, with artificial humans trying to sell us things, and they're going to look just like real humans. Like people are going to crave. Like I think there's going to be like luxury to like like human content, and so people are going to want that. And so yeah, you don't want to be the organization that doesn't have those faces that are sort of up front and center.
Yeah, yeah. What would you like? Do you happen to have any key systems or frameworks that you guys use, excuse me, to really ensure that your campaigns succeed and scale?
Yeah, so we do a couple different things. What we really like to do is uh, do sort of phased creator rollouts. So creators are going live over multiple periods. So in each rollout, we are sort of able to look at the engagement and the sentiment around that content, and then apply those learnings to sort of the brief. So we're kind of sort of constantly evolving, and if you can do that by sort of like having the creators ready to go. They go live with the brief, wait a week, and then make final updates to the creative brief that the next phase is going to go with, and go from there. And we use like a sort of sentiment analysis. We're able to ingest all the comments on any given content, to understand not just what it is, but like, are people happy or angry or sad about certain things? Are there things popping up? And on both of our sides of our business, on our commercial side of our business and our political side of our business, it's super useful for these clients to understand like what is driving, why people are engaging with their content at a deeper level. So, we've seen things like, voter intent and purchase intent being expressed in ways in comments that would have, I think, been lost under traditional analysis.
Do you happen to have like an example of somebody that you've supported, maybe on the corporate side, the business side, that you can kind of explain how that process works or what you took them through to even start coming up with the content?
Sure, sure. So I won't say the client's name, but we worked with a client that makes a product to clean your refrigerator, and it's a really good product. And there were people that thought that it had like some health consequences, that sort of this disinformation that was popping up that was not backed by any of the data, and it was sort of just like happening on sort of this TikTok, kind of specific kind of TikTok internet world. So we did an analysis. We found out sort of what people were saying. So we ingested all those TikTok videos, all the comments. We said, these are the key points that these creators are raising. Of these points, these two are not resonating at all in the comments. Like nobody cares about these. You shouldn't address these. These are just sort of this, extra. But this one specific point is coming back time and time again. And so we figured out what that point was, and then we go and we find a handful of people who would be able to speak authentically about why that wasn't true from different perspectives. So, mommy bloggers who had come at it from the same way, and then doctors and nurses, and to talk about it from their point of view, and then they all produce the content, and that content goes live. And what we're looking for is to see now that people are talking about the brand, we're showing it to the same audience that was seeing this content before. What is the change in sentiment around this issue? And over time, you really do see that you can change, especially when you're working with niche audiences, that you can really get in there and sort of have those conversations in ways that are really one-to-one and feel very authentic.
Yeah, so I love to hear that you're actually using the data to hear what the audience is saying and then go and find support one way or another that actually goes, actually, that's some misinformation, this is the right way, and so on and so forth. That's really fascinating. I don't think a lot of people look at content creation from that perspective. I think most people go, I'm just going to put data out there. I'm just going to tell
Right.
you what it is that we do. My question next for you is what really makes the difference between a campaign that moves people and one that gets ignored?
The number one answer is the more specific and inflexible the client is about the creative direction, the worse that content will perform. So
Mm.
if you hire Shay and you say, "Hey Shay, I want you to make a piece of content, and I love your style. You know what you're doing. Like, you speak to the right audience," and then they hand you a script, and that script, you read it, and that nothing in that script sounds like something you would say.
Hmm.
We've had clients that are like, "No, that's what we want." And so they'll make that content, and then the content is just sort of a dud. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
feel real. That the creators are not Meryl Streep. They can't take your kind of doll copy and turn it into like a Academy Award winning performance, right? This is she's also a single mom. She's not, she's doing other things while she's recording this, right? Um, so we have found, and we've done research that that if you allow creators to speak to their audiences in their own authentic way, again, understanding that there are message guidelines, that there are do's and don'ts, and there are things, but giving them that creative freedom,
Hmm.
that's the content that really pops. And sometimes the client will say, "Yeah, but I don't really like, the video doesn't really speak to me." I'm like, "Well, you're not the 25-year-old Gen Zer in Atlanta that we're trying to reach. You're a
Right.
63-year-old ad executive in Silicon Valley. It's not supposed to speak to you." Like, you don't even know what standing on business means, so this,
Yeah.
yeah, people get, I also find that people sometimes really get fixated on what they like. And I'm like, but remember, your target audience isn't you. It's we're talking, this is speaking in the language and the vernacular of the communities that you're looking to reach.
Hmm. Yeah. So I think also that's some different perspective that you're kind of giving to having outside creators support or helping move your message forward, especially if you're not in alignment or you're not the avatar that you're trying to target.
Right.
Have you ever worked with somebody in the past that's maybe used to be that avatar, but now they're, 10, 20, 30 steps removed from it and they're still thinking they understand the current avatar?
Yeah, I woke up that guy, and look, we all have to fight against that, right? Like, I know that when I was in 25 and I'm working for Obama in 2008, like, I'm at the height of the internet. Like, I get the internet. I feel like I'm making content that's hyper relevant to what's happening, and I felt, and then the shift has really happened, and you if you're not spending time organically using these platforms, you lose touch with sort of how quickly the styles and things change, what can be effective, that you
Mhm.
sometimes don't know what effective is. And then, like, Meta releases a study and they say, "Hey, lo-fi content outperforms in studio produced content 63% of the times across all of our ad platforms in 2022." Like, that should be a wake up call, right? Like, there is a place for those beautiful, shiny ads, but that is not what the younger consumers, and by younger at this point I mean like even 40 and under, who are like really into like creators. The skepticism as you get older, but the under 30s, like they have mainstream media does not have any credibility with them, whether we'd be talking about politics or business or anything. They are focused on sort of these creators that they've sort of bought into.
Yeah, that's crazy. So I'm curious. I come from the event world, and I know you guys have utilized webinars and master classes. From your perspective, how have events like webinars and master classes really contributed to your guys' growth strategy?
I webinars. So we have two different audiences. We have a creator audience where we have a creator app which folks can join and find things that might be a fit for them, campaigns that might be a fit for them. We also have our audience of buyers. So these are digital strategists, VPs of sales, VPs of growth. People who are running medium and above organizations. So we do webinars on both sides. We do webinars for creators that are geared towards best practices. We have one coming up where we're talking about how creators can run for office. And then on the business side, we do we'll have clients on to talk through case studies, and we found that like it's incredibly useful on both fronts, and it's the most successful ones are when we are the most strategically aligned with our guest. So like we're bringing on somebody from an agency we worked with. We're talking about a campaign we worked on together. The of us for this episode to be good is really high, and we're all going to share it afterwards. And so that content really pops. And then, sometimes you have somebody on who's like a little less excited about being on. Maybe they're doing you a favor, and that like the brand's not going to share it. And so like, even though it was cool to have that person on, and maybe it was a good conversation, like that is not going to lead to sort of getting out of your network as much as like maybe having a smaller client on who's more excited, who's going to be more likely to get out there and share it. So
Mhm.
yeah, but webinars have been fantastic for us. And I think we're going to continue to do more of those, and I want to do more in-person creator meetups and creator events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's like pulling the community together
Yeah.
where they wouldn't necessarily, like especially in the content creator space, when do they ever really get together as a community and talk shop from creator perspective,
Yeah,
right?
totally. Totally. And to work with people who like, you find like affinity and your value aligned around other things too is also good. So yeah, I think it's a big part of it. And in-person events, I think we're gonna start doing more of those, getting creators together in specific geographies. We've we've seen a lot more organizations and brands asking us to get creators to events. So like an event organizer will reach out to us and say, hey, doing an event for the launch of a TV streaming thing. Be great to have 10 creators who are really into sci-fi. And we'll be like, done. And we'll get them 10 creators and they go to the event, so that kind of stuff we think is really the future, because if you're already doing a big event, you might as well like get some people there filming it and broadcasting it to their channels.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that's an untapped niche that I didn't really necessarily think about until right now, because you have some events that will bring in quote unquote brand ambassadors, right? And help you
Right.
with registration and all of those pieces. But why not have content brand ambassadors
Yeah.
come in to support your event, whether you're doing a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day sales and enrollment event, or you're doing a product launch or whatever. It would
Yeah.
fit all the time, especially if you don't have in-house like social media support.
Yeah, exactly.
Ah, that's so smart. Okay, we'll have to talk about that more because that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
My next question for you is, what has been one of the hardest lessons you've learned in scaling people first?
Um, so we did a big pivot, which was we went from really being focused on the analysis stuff that I talked about earlier to the influencer stuff, because we were really focused on analysis early on, and we produced a lot of data about what organizations could and should do. And one of our answers is always content creators can counter their message, and this is how. And then people would always be like, but what about this content creator thing? That's really interesting. And then all of a sudden we noticed that that's where people were focusing. So we're like, maybe the product should just really, really be like content creator focused. So we pivoted and said, content creators are not just for brands, but they're for advocacy groups, they're for politicians, they're for, we work with crisis communications firms on like really complex stuff that like I can't really talk about here, but involve like a lot of, networks that you don't think about when you think about influencer marketing,
Yeah,
and so
nonprofits, I think,
yeah,
can utilize it as well.
definitely. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
amazing.
not nonprofits for sure. We just did a big campaign a little while ago with a big organization around fundraising, and it was really important to them to get people who had been affected by this illness and families that have been affected by this illness to talk about it, and then to take that content and then to put it in front of um, uh, people who had donors and lookalike donors. So you've got this creator content. It's super authentic. It's emotional because they're talking about an illness and how it's affected them and their family. And when we put this up against these audiences, we got a 316% return on ad spend. And that was just a huge win for the organization because the content was personal, the audience was the right audience, and we had enough of worked with enough different creators that we were able to optimize. We had like 20 or 30 different stories. So those stories sort of some really rose to the top and really drove those strong conversions and yeah, that I think nonprofits can be using creators for all sorts of things. I think fundraising is the next era.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that actually leads me to my next kind of question is the future trends. So where do you see and what trends do you see shaping the future of digital strategy and influence?
I think working with creators longer term across multiple platforms, so sort of deeper connections. I also think less of a focus on follower count and more of a focus on finding that exact person who really speaks to your audience and then scaling that with paid media.
Mhm.
We've seen user generated content scale better than organic influencer content. So the organic content does really well, but if you scale that UGC and you're putting up that White Castle loving video gamer up against other video gamers who love White Castle, and they basically see themselves that content performs incredibly well. And so if the more niche and specific you can get the ads while keeping them authentic, and like what's about to happen is AI is about to create a universe like Minority Report, where everywhere you walk, you're getting like, hey Ryan, like that. But that I think is like the opposite of what we're going for. We're going for like it's how do you scale people, their friends, and the feeling you get when you talk to your friends and family about a product or an organization or your values, like
Mhm.
community based.
Yeah. So, what would you suggest for today's businesses to really stay ahead and kind of future proof that part of their brand?
I think if you haven't done influencer marketing yet, it's you can always it's as easy as reaching out to one person and in their DMs and being like, hey, we want to talk about maybe collaborating, and go from there. You don't have to get a big piece of fancy software. We run campaigns with 5 creators up to 500, right? It really depends on what but just get started is one thing I would say, and make sure that you're building your business network on platforms that you have ownership over. Look at things like TikTok. I don't think TikTok's going to go away, but had TikTok gone away, people would have lost a lot of followers.
Hmm.
There's a lot of organizations that feel less comfortable at being on X now, and they spend a lot of time building up their followings there. I think things like Substack, things like email newsletters, they are back with a vengeance. And if you can make a good email newsletter, that mean you can actually speak to your audience. You have their email. If Substack decides to charge you $100, you can say, no problem. I'll just take my email list somewhere else. And you have that data portability that, you can build up 1 million Instagram followers, and Instagram can be like, oh, we're going to give you 1% organic reach, and you have to pay to reach the rest of your followers. So, that is something folks should be doing, like really thinking about how to make sure they're owning enough of their digital comms programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. So what if somebody wanted to reach out to you, Ryan, or People First, and have a conversation about, oh, I'm interested in either being an influencer or a content creator, or having you guys support us and taking a look at that? What's the best way for them to do that? And do you happen to have a gift for our audience today?
Yeah, so creators can go to peoplefirst.cc and join our creator portal, and you tell them what networks you're on and your affinities and brands you love and where you are. And whenever we have a campaign that's a fit for you, you'll get a notification, to apply. So that's super easy, and you can find you can find us there, peoplefirst.cc. And I do have a gift. I write a monthly newsletter called The Month in Digital, and it is for anybody who's following digital strategy trends, digital marketing trends, where I basically look at the last month and I try to sort of piece together sort of the most important things, so you can feel like you didn't miss them. And I started to do this because I was reading all this stuff, but I also felt like it created a system where I kind of force myself not to fall behind, because there's just so much happening. I need to be able to talk about blue sky at the same time as I need to be able to talk about the new LTK creator app. And so I just got to read a lot of blogs and a lot of newsletters. So I'm hoping to kind of distill that so folks can find that useful.
So we can just utilize all of your research and get the Cliff Notes summary version.
Totally. Yeah.
I
And
love
if I get
that.
and then one day I'll get enough subscribers, maybe I'll start charging for it. But it's free for now.
Perfect. Well, we will definitely put the link to that in the show
Thank you.
notes. Ryan, I really appreciate, this different kind of outlook on campaigns and reaching your audience and still having that power of authenticity with the strategic influence and scaling with impact that you really bring. So thank you for joining us today. Any last minute thoughts or ahas you'd like to leave our audience with?
Try to be good to each other and be nice on the internet whenever you can. We've all got to share it.
Perfect. Well, I want to also thank our audience for joining us on another episode. If you've enjoyed it, please make sure that you subscribe, leave us a review, and share creating powerful impact with somebody who's ready to scale their mission-driven work. Until next time, have an outstanding rest of your day. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Creating Powerful Impact podcast. If you are a successful coach, speaker, author, or thought leader who would like to be on this program, simply visit creatingpowerfulimpact.com/guest. If you are someone who got something out of this interview, would you please do me a favor and share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on your socials. Also, if you know somebody that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Creating Powerful Impact. I love seeing all of your posts and great guest selections. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show, and they really mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more about us? Head on over to our website, graceandeaseproductions.com, or follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Just look for Grace and Ease Productions on your favorite platform. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.